meeting on the Thursday, 4th September, here in Wanaka. I have two apologies, one from Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Whitehead. Do we have any leave of absence requests?
27th of September to 24th of October 2025.
Yeah. 11th to the 16th.
No.
I'm not sure if it's played.
Any further? Any further? Okay. I move that the apologies from Councillors Ferguson and Whitehead be accepted and the request for leave of absence be approved. Do I have a seconder? Nikki Cody, all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. Declarations of conflict of interest. Any declarations? None. Okay, no matters lying on the table, no special announcements, there's no public forum. Right, I move that the agenda be confirmed without addition or alteration. Seconder, Nikki Mel, all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. Confirmation of public minutes. I move that the minutes of the public part of the ordinary meeting of Queenstown Lakes District Council held on 31 July 2025. Send one. Right. Be confirmed as a true and correct record. Do I have a second? Thank you, Vicky.
One query on it.
Yeah.
The times at the end where we go into public excluded. I think it's just been copied over from the previous meeting. It's later in there. Yeah, this one's got.
So we'll change it to 6:44.
No, I think it was about.
I know it was 7:10 when we finished.
Yeah,
but that's this is public part.
It was about 6:10 or somewhere around there.
You're saying it's 6:10.
And then I think the next page talks about when we came out of it, but that's also covered in excluded minutes. So it was the copy previous.
All good. Right. All those in favour? Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. Right. Item 1. Help Coyote Southern Corridor Plan.
But the other
Minutes approved. 26th of August.
Right, so on my run sheet. All right, sorry. Okay, so the minutes of the public part of the ordinary meeting of the Queenstown Lakes District held on 26th of August 2025 be confirmed as a true and correct record. Right. Do I have a seconder? Seconder?
a query on that, actually. So.
Yeah. Matt, thank you. What's the query?
So it's a query. Typically, the minutes we have usually don't go into who made what comments. On this one item, we've got 3 different comments that have been minuted, all in opposition to the resolution, and no other comments that were in favour of it. Just querying why have we done that, and is that standard practice?
It's not standard practice for us to ascribe comments to individual councillors. It's just to record the nature of the flow of the debate.
There's nothing there that says anything in favour of the resolution, which is what it's passed. Seems if you were looking back at the minutes, well, why did you pass it? All the comments that were recorded were against it. It seemed a bit odd.
Yeah. Those councillors that did ask to have their votes recorded, so they could be, but we can basically, I'm not sure what we do at this point. We can collapse those to make more generic statements that a number of councillors spoke against it, and removed those names.
Exactly, I don't think I did. Just want to vote to.
I think
But I know, yeah, probably would have.
I mean, the votes are recorded, that's well good, but just, just the minuting of the comments, It's been a recurring theme that some comments are recorded and some aren't. It's unclear how it's decided which comments are recorded and which aren't. So, like I say, it's a query, it's not a correction, so yeah. Okay.
no, that wouldn't be a good.
Okay.
Forward.
You hear from the stadium, but just take it noted for future reference. Okay. All good.
Yeah, because this has come up at other committee meetings too, and the government said they got away from doing that, so it's a wee bit surprising.
Yeah. Okay. No, for future chief executive.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Can
And
I just?
Yeah.
Thanks, yeah, look, I just think there's a bigger piece of work to be done here around, because we used to have quite fulsome minutes, and they're quite useful, and especially with AI now, because you can kind of search them. Now we're cutting it down to just about nothing, and you have to watch the whole recording if the recording got lost. So I just think we're not actually taking complete minutes, and I wonder if there's a piece of work to do. This is not the point here, but around how we take sufficient minutes to actually record the major points. I mean, the water service delivery plan is a massive piece of work, and really important and critical for our future. Like all councillors have data.
Councillor, councillor, we're just talking about whether you want to accept or not minutes.
Yeah, but
What you're discussing, hang on, what you're discussing about is off irrelevant, and so I'll put it to the vote now. All those in favour? Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. Thank you. Item 1. Southern Corridor Final Structure Plan for Adoption. And who's taking this one away?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you. We have been reporting on the Te Tapuai structure plan for the past 2 years through the Planning and Strategy Committee. So we're just mindful that for some of you, you've been on the journey, and for some of you, it's the first time that you may have seen some of the detail. So we've taken a whole of council approach. It's been inputted by many of our own departments, but we've also had lots of support from the Otago Regional Council and the Grow Wild Rural Partnership. So I'll hand over to Cam and Katrina to give us something.
So the Te Tapuai Southern Corridor Structure Plan shows a pathway to develop 9,300 houses, supported by retail, social and commercial services. The draft structure plan went out for public engagement, where we received feedback from the community, local landowners, as well as our partnership. The feedback has been incorporated and the structure plan has been amended accordingly. Alongside this, we've been working through technical assessments, and the findings of these technical assessments have been integrated into the structure.
So one of the things that has come alongside the structure plan is obviously the fast track resource consent on RCL. During the consultation phase and the last month, we've been engaging with RCL on a weekly basis to work through some of their issues and how consistent the fast track consent is to the structure plan. Whilst no formal agreements have been made, we've made some really positive steps forward in terms of alignment. And as you'll sort of see in the structure plan implementation plan, one of the first actions is to work with others to get a suitable funding agreement sorted out and aligned, so that these types of processes can be as aligned as most as they can be in terms of the direction of the development down in Te Tapuai. We did want to highlight during the development and the finalisation of the structure plans, there are some very minor amendments that we are going to need to make after the adoption of the plan. This is largely to do with the mapping and some of the legends, just as it's quite working as it should do. We will provide a summary of those changes up on the website, but they are very minor, a couple of typos. Equally, through some discussions with Councillor Smith, we would like to make 2 changes to the resolutions for Resolution 2 and Resolution 3. So Resolution 2, we would like change to adopt the amended Tapawai Southern Corridor Structure Plan and commence the options analysis to advise what is the recommended planning approach to give a statutory weight to the structure plan. And Resolution 3 is notes that adopting the Tapawai Southern Corridor Structure Plan will enable council developers and the government to work together on developing alternate financing and funding options and agreements to bring forward the delivery of the structure plan, ensuring the essential infrastructure provisions meet demand in the short, medium and long term. And other than that, we're very happy to take questions.
Questions? Okay, Kev.
Yeah, thank you. And firstly, thank you for responding to that query. It was acknowledgement that the RMA isn't the only mechanism that will or can be used to progress, and equally that development agreements aren't the only mechanism that will or can be used to fund infrastructure. The other, I mean, with the caveat, obviously support holistic planning approach that we've taken. How do we deal with the fact that the infrastructure constraints and thresholds in undertaking this? We just clearly don't have the infrastructure in place or the funding in place to deliver this amount of housing in the Southern Corridor. How do we deal with that limitation and the fact that it's already full, so to speak?
Yeah, so there is known capacity constraints for infrastructure. Within the Three Waters infrastructure, we have undertaken a detailed assessment. Within this detailed assessment, we've identified what the preferred solution, by ultimate solution would be, and we've got staging plans in place to allow a staged development process. For Three Waters, it's divided into 3 stages. I can go into detail into each stage, but basically that will align with what our forecasted growth is in that area, which is said as 350,000 and 350 houses per year. And there's Three Waters and
Every sweating before.
And our Three Waters staging plan aligns with 350 houses a year.
Look, I understand that principle. You know, there's been differences of how council have expressed, you know, we can't stop development, we've got to allow it to occur, but there are points at which we just can't. We don't have any more capacity. Are we able to do that at a pace that aligns with our infrastructure?
So when we carefully came up with the target of 350, we looked at probably 3 things. One was, what were the development community saying to us in terms of what was going on? Second of all, what was in our long-term plan at the moment, and how does that align? And third of all, we have been doing some work around starting to do costing for the implementation of that. So as you can see in the structure plan, there are triggers associated with the target of 350 and also how that aligns with our LTP. And when that starts to not quite align, is how do we use some of the other funding mechanisms and working with developers to bridge that gap. And so that is the whole point of the action to work with developers to come up with that funding agreement, so that we've got a pipeline for them to bring forward the housing and the demand, but also in a financially responsible way.
It also signals to developers how much growth can happen with each stage upgrades. So there's that transparency there in that expectation.
So we've got, you've highlighted 2 feasible long-term options for servicing wastewater, both of which require disposal of treated wastewater on the northern side of the Kawara. That's correct. So you either treat and dispose of the water on the, or you treat it at Project Shalona, is that right? Okay. And 12 months ago, we were sort of highlighted that the bridge was nearing peak capacity of 1,500 vehicle movements per hour. Where are we at 12 months later? The peak vehicle movements, do we know?
I think we're going to sort of just, I think we're tracking under similar numbers to back then, and it's probably reaching capacity in 2 years. Is that's correct?
We had 2 years then effectively.
Yeah.
With 1,200, limited 1,500. Are we halfway to that? We 1,350 or we in between?
Not sure on the
okay.
detail, but I think that
Okay.
we were tracking about the same, but we do acknowledge there is an issue with transport. And essentially we've been looking really closely with NZTA to work through what is the solution for the corridor. Unfortunately we're in the situation where we needed to have a plan to help inform what the solution could be. And a solution to that could be, there are various local roading improvements that could happen, and in the implementation plan, it's one of the key actions to work further. But things such as that secondary crossing have been highlighted, and potentially working through with MRT, a solution like that is what's happening.
But under the existing capacity, we're reaching practically peak capacity within 1 to 2 years. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for this. My questions are around the wastewater as well, because it seems to be the potentially hard constraint, other things we've looked around. What is it fair to say you've made an assumption that we will be able to deal with disposal for effectively double the number of connections we've got to those on the other side of the river? Why do you believe that's a valid assumption, given that many real consents and there will be constraints to that as well? Why do you think that's a valid assumption?
That's what the project is looking at. It's not our project, is considering the size and scale of the southern corridor in their planning. That's what it is.
But we haven't got any, there's no work that's been done that's in front of us that says that the disposal system on the other side of the river could cope. We've got nothing in front of us, so that's why I'm asking you, is there something that you've seen that we haven't? Why is it a valid assumption to assume that that disposal solution could cater for twice the number of connections that we've currently got?
Probably come back to that particular project and the scope of what they're trying to do, the treatment plan, as well as the disposal field options and the size and scale that they're catering for. So we are part of that consideration. And exactly.
So if we can't, so let's say if we can't dispose of wastewater under that consent with that solution, if there is a capacity constraint there, given the land or given the resource consent, what happens then?
That would be good.
And last question, in the meantime, if we put the structure plan in place, it will presumably be given weight around the place, presumably valuers who are valuing the properties down there for CVs for rates purposes will take that into account. Are we potentially causing an uplift in value and an uplift in rates in fact, when we don't understand whether we can actually deliver because of the rates?
Well, on a number of occasions with the valuers, they'll look at what the spatial plan would say first of all, and this has been an area that's been identified as a priority development area. So it would never get the full value of a residential zone. But as it moves through each of the stages to get that zoning, it will get closer and closer to that residential zoning state. So at the moment, it would be a factor, but a value would need to consider that or any lands that might be seeking evaluation on.
I think the reason why there's still work for us to do in the space around the Freewater's final solution that we're working on, but all the work done today has got us to that particular point, which is what we're seeing talking about today.
I'd also like to highlight that there's two long-term options that we've put on the table. One is to move untreated wastewater to the plant, and one is to move treated. So there are, yes, there are two options.
Yeah, no, for that, thank you.
Kevin?
Thanks. A couple of quick questions. So just more generally, there are 6 priority development areas in the spatial plan, and this is the first one that's got a structure plan. You get for it.
Second, first one,
After.
after the spatial plan was adopted. So ladies, I was done at the same time.
Oh, yeah, okay, right, yeah. So the other four then, are they coming up sometime soon, or which is the first one of those?
We are working through, but definitely the next is Southern Monica and Frankton, probably the next two highest ranked ones.
So it's just generally, the other thing I was going to note was, so once this has been adopted, what it is it then help to lend weight to those discussions, say with the Transport Agency about transport projects? Because obviously the other one, other than a bridge, is the cycle route.
In schools and
Yeah.
within the Ministry
Yeah.
of Education really helps that next.
And buses too, Kevin, OIC is involved.
Good. So, because the only other thing I was going to say about the cycle route is that it's basically ready to go with the Trails Trust. They've almost got their resource consent. They're just short of a bit of money, but if there's this can help generate some funding for it, would be useful. Everyone. Thank you.
Is it? Councillor Cox, do we only have one question?
One.
I'll ask it slowly. No, sorry. Following a little bit from what Councillor Bartlett just said, I note that a lot of this expenditure is year 18 in the LTP. How MRT, the school bit, how do we ensure that we can get some pace to it if we're trying to respond to development happening quicker than it's coming here? And how do we look at lag with those other agencies or avoiding duplication in those areas? So just, yeah, is there any planning currently around how we adapt to it, you know?
So, action 3 under the implementation plan is to work in collaboratively with Ministry of Education for planning future school provisions within Tiputaki. And one of the things we'd like to work with them on is providing them with some better understanding around the demographics of the area. That's really important for them in terms of what's happening between primary and secondary school age and what the households that we might get within Tiputaki, and whether or not within the decision making around having a second high school at Ladies Mile and one down at the Southern Corridor, how that relates to their investment profile. So getting them as much information as we can will help them make a really robust decision. So we've worked with them on that. And we're equally hopefully doing some work with OIC and Transport Agency around the options of the second bridge, mass rapid transit, and sort of bus lanes. So we'd like to work with them on a feasibility study to do that, and that's in the implementation plan as well.
So if that hit us before year 18, we'd be looking into those other funding levers to have to try and fill, or develop a agreement.
So one of the things we sort of like to provide you in the future is when there are those sort of gaps in the future, how that relates to the 350 target to make sure that development occurs, and what are the other funding mechanisms that we use to help bridge that gap. And I think the implementation plan and the work that's providing us will give you some greater understanding to make some robust decisions around the implications along the investment that may be needed in the corridor.
Thank you.
No further questions. Do I have a mover?
Oh,
Thank you. No, that's good. Thank you, Matt. Any discussion?
Yes. Look, thanks. Look, I appreciate the work that's been done, and I understand why we want to do structured plans where we can. I do feel that this one has a hard constraint at this moment with the wastewater. And I think when you have a hard constraint, you can't put forward, because the capacity that we can accommodate in that corridor depends on how much wastewater we can cope with. What I think we're going to be doing here is probably pushing our decision on a preferred option for wastewater disposal into the water discharge. I don't think, because all of your land-based councils, all of our land-based solutions have a capacity constraint, because the land can only take so much, and we only have so much land, and it's expensive. And we have limited options and they've fallen away already. I think what this is going to do, because if you approve it, it's approving using the same system that the rest of the Whakatūpu Basin uses. So we're lumping it all into one, which is driving us towards a long-term discharge to water. And I'm really concerned about that because it's removing our options and our community's options going forward. I'm not opposed to structured planning, and I don't think you've done a bad job if you had a solution for wastewater disposal, but we don't. And so to me, we need to push pause on this and wait until we understand what the options are in front of us around wastewater disposal. Once we have that, then we can make a call on this. And to me, there is no rush because we can't do any planning anyway at the moment. So this is premature and it's going to constrain us when it comes to wastewater options. And I don't think the community deserves that from us. And that's the reason why I'm voting against.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, look, just to highlight that, like I said before, that I support holistic planning, land use planning. We have a serious problem on our hands in terms of infrastructure in the Southern Corridor, and highlighted the transport which could effectively fail within or receive very low levels of service within 2 years. And equally, we have some uncertainty around wastewater. We have some uncertainty around, the report last year said that we were requiring 50% mode shift in order to make the network work as well. That just to highlight the levels of challenge ahead of us. As I said, I support the principle. I will be supporting the structure plan, but the infrastructure, what Lisa mentioned before is that our funding is year 8 to year 10, and that only covers about 10 or 15% of the infrastructure costs that will be associated with the Southern Corridor to achieve the structure plan. So yeah, look, it's a massive challenge and we don't have the answers to it yet, but this does provide us a mechanism to reach out for other funding solutions, and without this work, it limits our options, I think.
There you go, Kev.
I'll echo some of what Quentin just said too. There's a whole lot of good work's gone into this, and so the area has been identified as a growth or priority development area. So this sets it up to be able to achieve that and to be able to have those conversations to plan for the infrastructure and sort out the funding for it and come up with those solutions. We're not going to end up with 9,000 odd houses there next year. The growth rate, the development rates talk about 350 houses a year. And even that's not going to happen in the first year, but that gives time for these other solutions for the infrastructure problems that we have got to be implemented or defined, and things will develop along the way anyway. So
Yeah, I'd ask us also to reflect on what would happen without a plan. And then we're talking about developer-led development that's disjointed, without clarity around how we might share the cost sharing equitably between our existing communities and our new arrivals, and no cohesive vision around long-term solutions for the much needed infrastructure that's there and that we need to come, and I hear people laugh about things like our mode shift, or people used to laugh that cars were going to take over horses, and Ladies Mile was originally developed so ladies could learn to drive here, and we thought that was going to be a very slow and gentle place to be taking your vehicle for its first turn. So who's to say that we won't have MRT quicker than the 8 to 10 year time frame? Who's to say that we won't have innovation and homes coming at us faster than we've perhaps planned for? So I think this is a really important piece of work to try and put some parameters around what's coming at us. As we keep saying, we can't stop the growth, we have to be able to respond to it. The growth has to pay for growth. So I'd like to thank all the staff, all the people, stakeholders that have worked so hard on trying to bring this together, because when I think of what would happen without one, it's not going to slow it down, and at least this way we've got some big picture thinking going on. So thank you for all your work, and I will be supporting it, obviously.
Thank you, Lisa. Any further? Me? close it out.
Yeah, just wanted a big thank you to the team. Big job this one. You've been so working on for 2 years. Yeah, I agree with some of the comments made. If you don't have a plan, what do you reckon? We're going to get a whole lot of ad hoc activity, which will be the detriment of our communities rather than a positive step forward by putting on the table a really good plan with implementation. We can come at it with a negative speculative approach, or we can come at it with the information we've got on the table with an implementation plan. Yes, there are challenges. We will address those challenges as we go. And if we can't meet some of the deadlines, then that will slow the process down. But in the future, it'll benefit the communities already out there and the future communities. What comes out of this structure plan, the whole structure plan, will be for the benefit of those communities and I think of the district. Without the plan, we'll be in much more strife and much more adverse outcomes than we will have with a plan. So thank you very much for the team. You've done a great job, and that's why I was keen to move the resolution and support the adoption of this plan.
Thank you, Noel, and with that, we've got resolutions 1, 2, 3, and 4 as amended.
I think it would be
Amended.
As amended, yeah. As spoken by Cameron. So put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? One against. Motion carried. Thank you, team, and thank you, Chief Executive. Could you pass on congratulations to the team? 2 years of hard work. Number 2, retrospective approval of Queenstown Lakes District Council submissions on the resource management national direction, page 76 of your papers. Gary.
Happy to put the recorded red, just highlighting that both of these represented a significant amount of cross organisation collaboration, a lot of different subject matter expertise involved. So I'm grateful to step with that.
Questions? Questions? Or
Just a really simple one. How do we keep track if they take notice of our submissions? Do they ever, like we respond to our submitters to things, do they come back and go, great idea, QLDC, thanks? What happens?
Through you, Chair, I mean, with the high ones, we often just receive an acknowledgement. But I think that any with respect to some of the alarm words in the past, we do get direct feedback related to incorporation.
I have, yes, yeah, some we've had, some of the MPS changed and to be aligned with that, to make sure that we're accountable, because often Queenstown Lakes is an anomaly, so we have had we've had call outs and things like that. So we don't do check that in.
I can advise nothing so far.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
No quick one. Sorry I didn't input into this at the time. And I agree with most of the stuff. There's a few things I'm just concerned about. And one would be just around the natural hazards and clarification around that. We were looking at using natural hazard information as natural hazards right the way through the process of the spatial plan, then when it goes through the RMA, and then at the consent level. And that's a bit, I'm just interested in whether the team can clarify how much of the assessment needs to be done at the various stages, because recently with the intensification plan change, we've been talking about intensification, assessing the risk and almost going to, you know, if you were following the policy, some really intense detail would have to be supplied by the applicant around, you know, risk tolerance of the community and so on. Can you explain the team's position on what sort of assessment should be done at which level?
Okay. Do you want to speak to that?
Right answers. I can respond to that if you wish. It will depend on what level it comes in. So we would be looking at trying to get the information related to that answer. So determine what happens in an area at whichever stage that comes in. So if it comes in at the plan change stage or the variation stage, then we would be doing the assessments then through section 32 with a cost benefit analysis in relation to the zoning that might be proposed. If there's already zoned area that wants to be developed, then that would give it perfect sense. And we would do the, if it hasn't been done already, which is the case for a lot of our zone land, we would be getting the assessments of the natural hazards and what impacts, adverse effects would have, whether those are mitigated or not through what's proposed for resources. Is that the question?
Right, yeah, I'm just wondering what we're asking of government, what we're asking to clarify, because to me, it should be done at a high level. You can't have, sorry, it's kind of a question. You can't have, to me, individual applicants doing, completing the part of the regional policy statement wherever it is, it requires a risk tolerance assessment. So I'm just wondering what clarity exactly you're seeking from government, and I'm asking just because it's generally useful to understand how we're dealing with natural hazards.
And speak as an example that's helpful
Yeah.
with the structure plan. So with the Tapawai structure plan, we actually went into quite a bit of detail. So we did, because we knew that the Southern Corridor does have a number of hazards. We wanted to make sure that we had a lot of clarity regarding what those were and what the risks were to different land uses. So we actually have done a lot of that as part of the Tapawai structure plan. And we've also done the qualitative risk assessment as per the proposed regional policy statement. So
Good to know why, but
Yeah.
generally, because I noticed with the intensification plan change we did. So, anyway, look, it's probably not going to go anywhere. I haven't got clarity, that's fine.
Any questions? Right, do I have a mover? Thank you, Nikki. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Gavin. Any discussion?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, look, I think this highlights the conversation we're having with the last item actually, and the integration between land use planning and infrastructure and all that sort of stuff. The importance of urban design, the importance of landscapes in our district are all sort of highlighted in here as being, that we risk throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and we've got to make sure those things are still protected here. So they're all covered off. Aligning infrastructure and development is obviously one of the biggest challenges for us, and that's highlighted.
Further discussion? I'll put it to the vote. Those all in favour, say aye. Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. Next thing. Item 3, adoption of the Te Tapanui Queenstown Hill Reserve Restoration Management Plan. Page 111. Wait, huh? Yeah, go for it.
We're here to consider the adoption of the Te Tapanui Queenstown Hill Restoration and Management Plan. Following feedback and discussion, it was agreed that the name of the plan should be updated to include the word restoration. This better reflects the primary focus of the plan moving forward, which the ecological restoration of the plan, While forestry is part of the plan, it's no longer the central focus. We'd like to thank all members of the community who made submissions on the draft plan. We know that contributing to this kind of process takes time, effort and consideration, and we appreciate the engagement. In total, we received 92 submissions and 8 submitters spoke at the hearings. The plan was updated and has been shaped by the community's feedback and submissions. The plan plays a crucial role in the future of the reserve, including how trees will be managed and what revegetation will look like in the years ahead. Lastly, we want to thank the hearings panel for their work on the plan and discussions during the deliberations, which have brought the plan to the final form we're considering today. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions, councillors?
Mine's just around momentum from here. So I'm just wondering, without funding for the restoration of it, there might be some for removal, we kind of have to match, there's going to be some work it out, but having talked to the WCG, there will need to progress with an outline plan, is that correct? Do we have funding and can we progress with these things now within existing budgets so that we have some momentum available and funding comes available in various places we can?
Yeah, you answered that. So within the report, it's stating that there is some funding in the LTP for wildfire management, and we can look to utilise that for some of that next stage planning and operational planning, and then also there's looking out to see what other groups we can partner with, that whether that's operational removal of the trees or tree planting. So we're just investigating those pathways.
Yeah.
As the next stage, and then looking to get something that we can put into the next LTP for council to consider.
So will we be doing that outline plan work under the RMA ahead of the LTP, like, can we progress with that now or not?
That's what-
And if we can't, is the reason funding was it something?
We've still got to work through that detail, that operational detail. There's no point applying for an outline plan until we understand exactly sort of how we will, what sort of machinery we'll be using. So it's sort of that operational planning that we need to consider next. So there's not exactly any constraints to stop us with doing stuff.
So that operational work can start before the next LTP,
Yeah.
and then at the back of that, the outline plan process.
So we could start the operational element of planning for it, but I guess the intent in terms of money, we'll be looking towards the next LTP to put something in.
Okay, but if we can attract funding ahead of that time, there's nothing stopping us in terms of staff resources.
There was funding to come up. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Is there any chance we can get some of that limited, Joe?
You've been
Oh,
question.
sorry, before we, what was the purpose of wanting to move it? Because there will always be a decision to be made by both managers around what the available resources are.
Running the discussions of the inaccurate sort of.
Yeah,
systems are.
so just want to then contextualise that, but obviously decisions around pace at which we fund is reliant on staff availability, other programs and projects, and obviously making sure that we have the right program in place. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
understood.
appropriate. I just wanted the project discussion of this.
Cool.
Any further questions? Okay, got a resolution for us. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Matt. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Gavin. Okay, any discussion? Or hang on, you two finish, start and finish. Yeah,
I'll go last.
okay.
No, yes, yeah. So
Yeah, there you go.
this was really good, and I really enjoyed being on this panel. And we can put it all together. So one of the things I was going to say was really impressed with the survey. Yeah, it was very concise and it asked direct questions, it got direct answers, and it was really easy to work through to read all those responses. I was going to make just one observation that notes on the person or the people who submitted at the hearing, whether they were online or not. There was one who was wasn't noted as online, Dennis here. But the one I wanted to note was Mrs. McPhail. It says on there that she was online, but she was actually there the whole part of the hearing. And just to acknowledge, along with some of the others who made good submissions, that her submission was great, and just her level of involvement in this space over a long period of time too. So I just wanted to note her presence there today. Yeah.
Oh, close it out. Go for it.
Firstly, apologies for the long name. It is massive, but I think one of the goals we wanted to achieve here was move it from being just a forestry that we were dealing with to actually restoration and looking at removal, but also regeneration at the same time and biodiversity. And that was really clear from the submission. So I think we achieved that really well. The other thing, sitting on the Ben Lomond and Queenstown Hill Reserve Management Plan helped me to understand how this aligns really well with those management plans, and it certainly does. And we got a very good, clear mandate from the submitters on what they wanted to achieve from that Queenstown Hill Reserve. So I think they should be pretty pleased. Obviously, there were some that weren't overly pleased with it with regards to recreational use, and some people actually like wilding conifers. So there was a bit of that to balance, but I think we've managed that balance really well. I think that's probably all I've got to say on it, other than thanks to the team and the staff and the panel and all those that submitted and this result. We always knew that funding was never going to be part of this conversation. We knew it was going to be something that we decide on at a later date. And I'm sure that will come, but this was about setting up momentum for us to shift from what it is currently now, where we pour stacks of money into trying to control, to actually looking at how do we eliminate this problem completely. So. Well done, thank you all.
You with Matt, with that? Vote, all those in favour?
Thank you.
Aye, against, motion carried. Thank you, panel. Item 4, budget carry forwards 24-25, page 186.
So we haven't got a Jeremy today. We've got the
the Tony instead.
And I've got some color over here, if there's like really can't ask.
So this is really an annual paper that comes after our year end, just getting all those capital projects in the right year. And so if you look at the table on page 190, you can see that we achieved 132.5 million actual delivery, which was only in 9 months. So when you actually look at that diagram, it's actually progress, but only 9 months. And yeah, and we can see in paragraph paragraphs that we're actually getting better at this carry forward. We're actually spending more and getting it in the right year. So that's good progress as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, so welcome to any questions.
Questions, councillors? Okay, Gavin, and I'll go back.
I just had a quick one to try and clarify some, might be just my confusion. 17.5 and the 17.1. Obviously there's a 17.1 and a 0.4, which makes it 17.5. In the actual resolution recommendation, it talks about net carry forward of 17.5. That's A, and then B is the brought forward of 0.4. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding right, but that 17.5 should be a 17.1.
17.1 is the net.
Yeah.
So
Then the
push
on
forward
page
17.5, bring forward.
Page 188, it talks about net carry forward. Which, yeah, that's something where I was getting confused with what's written in the resolution in that paragraph 5. So yeah, so the 17.5 is the right number on the solution.
Yeah, so coming from the prior year to the new year, we need 17.5. But in the future year, we need to bring forward another 0.4, which gets us net of 70.
Very much.
Thank you. Just a question, obviously, doing a much better job than previous years with 11.1% total carry forward, but I guess from my perspective, what does good look like? That's probably question one. And then maybe secondly, does this sort of drawing down, does this indicate anything?
I guess the nature of capital projects, it's hard to get it exactly perfect.
Just less than last year.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess we only had 9 months to stuff it up.
Maybe. I suppose what good looks like is we actually spend our capital budgets closer to the actual spend, but we also continue to deliver value for money for that. We're fortunate in some cases, not all that often, but we're able to deliver some of our CapEx for less than our budget, so we take those wins. We are getting better at our forward work program, getting those things in the road, but it's an ongoing sort of road for us. So good from my point of view is that we're getting much closer to that budget, and we've got these carry forwards and achieving well.
Is it indicating anything though in terms of setting of the markets and delivery for contractors or anything like that?
Not so much.
Not really.
I think just to follow on from Tony and Catherine's comment, I mean, part of this is also we've developed, I suppose, a better forward planning regime for our capital program, so that we're trying to take out more of those imponderables, particularly sort of early design phase, consenting phases, land purchase. They've often been the things that have tripped us up. And I think the other one is the reality. I mean, we can make things squeeze in the market, but actually that's possibly by being less accurate in our costings, about being less focused on value for money, as Tony has said. So I think it's the key is actually keeping a tight rein on what we do and being very focused on what we carry forward. And you'll see that all the projects and the carry forwards are either bits of work that are underway or ready to go as part of, say, a new ceiling contract season or something like that.
We've got a couple of specific ones and one bigger one. Just on line item 9, with the like adaptation. I've obviously been interested in the North East still, so just wondering what that carry forward is for. It says PM procure design package live on works I just don't know what that's for.
Line item, sorry.
Line item 9,
9.
39.
Oh, sorry.
Did you ask them what the actual project is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's that project to do some minor improvements to the bank, the GMP.
Perfect. That's awesome, thank you. And the other one was also an old project, line item 23, 60,000 for safe system audit recommendations. I'm just struggling to understand how we can spend 60,000. Safety. Does anyone know?
Project coordination, too.
Maybe that's the marina.
Car park.
That's what line, so 20.
23, yeah. I think I'm reading it right, but I'm not there. Sorry, it's $60,000. Yeah, 60,000. There's obviously been a safety audit of the project that's up there, and I'm just wondering, out of interest, what we could possibly spend $60,000 on.
I don't think that's, I mean, we can supply the safety audit, you can see what's proposed to do, so I don't know exactly what we're spending on, but I'm assuming it's a reasonable amount actually for that.
There's a lot.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, and look, the bigger question is around just the operation. I understand the capex, and we usually carrying forward because we underspend on capex, and we don't complete, and then we're completing projects. But with the operational side of it, I'm just trying to get my head around it because we overspend generally on our OPEX in the wash up at the end of the year, or I think we did last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. So by carrying forward these budget lines, we already overspent, we're carrying this forward, there must be a rates impact. And look, correct me if my head is understanding this wrong, but 1.1 million is around a 1% rates increase, slightly less probably now that we've grown. Can you explain the rates impact of that operational budget carry?
Sure. So we did have a slight surplus, and where a lot of these projects are already in train, and those kind of just ready to finish off those projects. And the rating impact is, it's already been rated for. So what we're doing is we're carrying it over and we're not re-rating for it, I guess, in the new year.
Okay, so in the wash up at the end, it's not, there's no sort of double counting, or it's not like a budget's being kept. Okay, that's cool. I'm just trying to understand what that rating is. And just finally, just interesting to get detail on the operational budgets when we do the carry forwards. When we do the long-term plan, we don't see this level of budget detail of an operational expenditure. Just hoping we can see that going forward. Thanks.
Good questions. Yeah.
You say we've done better than last year. Looking forward, do you think we're talking 87% delivery targets? Is that we're tracking okay? Is it realistic to keep where we're at, or should we expect it to be a bit roller coastery?
Well, there'll be another reforecast process happening in December. The council meeting in December will have another reforecast opportunity. So you'll be able to see at that point where we're progressing.
Still, yeah. And so things like better off funding, there's some of that in this. And I think I read the deadlines of 26th of June. So does that, is there timelines in there, and are we all on track with our sequencing and planning around any other?
That's what better off funding is.
So there's better off funding in OPEX, so
And
that's
OPEX.
part, and that's captured in there. So some of the OPEX carrying forward is actually Crown funding that we're not rating for. In terms of other funding strands, we've got some remaining HIF fund, so the Housing Infrastructure Fund drawdowns, which we're entitled to take. Obviously, we're working through those for the projects that they relate to.
So that doesn't impact these interdependent on any of those timelines, these carry forwards that are there?
Well, I think they basically work within the frameworks that are there. We've had a number of HIF loans which have now been withdrawn by the government, and that's because developers haven't been able to come to the party. But to the extent that we've got HIF loans or major capital works, they're still live, and we still track those and report on them.
Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Lyle. Seconder. Thank you, Barry. Any discussion? the vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. Thank you. Retrospective approval of procurement plan for legal services panel by Brendan. We're looking at page 197 of the papers. Sorry.
Thanks, councillors. This paper seeks the retrospective approval of the procurement plan and the legal panel. The report outlines what the legal panel's for, how we go about appointing lawyers for each job that we get. It's got to our attention that when you look at the aggregate spend over the 3 years plus the 2 1-year pensions for all of the panel firms, that amount should come to council at the procurement plan stage for approval. The councillors are aware that this has issue that's cropped up recently, and we bring in retrospective approval. Thank you for the
Questions? Vicky?
Thanks. Just wondering, how do you become aware of it? Did it go through audit, or did the legal team pick it up, or?
Through the chair, I have been running a bit of an audit myself without it going through the internal audit. And one of the things I was trying to do was make sure that everything was loaded into our IT systems. And when I asked a question around that, Brendan came back and said, this is the case.
Right, okay. Right, second question, thank you. In terms of who got reappointed to the panel, so it looks like Lane Eagle and William Simpson Grissom and Muriel O'Connell were previously our big national.
Yep.
In terms of after, who did we appoint?
We also, they were reappointed.
They were reappointed.
And we also appointed an additional firm, Tuttle Kinlay, and they've been doing work. So, and pretty much the spec's been split 5 ways rather than 4 ways. We've also appointed a couple of specialist barristers. We haven't had to use them.
Yeah, okay. How long have those partners, law firms, have we been using the same ones?
I know that we appointed those 4 in 2019. I'm not aware of what happened with people there in terms of using them, and a number of partners have changed.
Right. Okay, that's great. And I'm just interested in the actual. So I went through and had a look at the procurement plan, and obviously we sit around the table as well and are interested in legal advice, having access to it, and having, I guess, objective advice and making sure that it's not just advice that supports staff's position. Just looking at I'm just concerned, and so there's some things in the proposed approach to flexibility regarding the type and style of advice provided, specifically balancing formal advice with support to council's team. I mean, I'm just trying to understand. It feels like the procurement plan is asking for a very tight relationship with the staff, but there's no mention of the councillors in the plan at all. Do you see a world in which we might have a procurement approach that says, you will be accessible to the elected members when required, and will be able to provide, or you'll be willing to provide direct advice to elected members? Is that something other councils do? Do you think it's inappropriate?
So the position with all of our panel lawyers and our internal legal team is that they have one client, and that's the council as a whole. The question of who they take instruction from and who they provide advice from, primarily is through the chief executive. Council, if it's minded to, can make a resolution directed to the chief executive to get legal advice on a particular topic. That's always the prerogative. The question of whether individual councillors access legal advice, that's not something that's...
No, it's not what I'm asking for. It's more a case of when you go to procurement, are they willing to engage with the elected members and have their advice, objective advice, delivered to the elected members already? So it's just that, I guess my point is that I will respect.
I do need to make a point that we get legal advice for the council. We don't get legal advice for the staff. That legal advice is objective advice to that council.
Yep.
Thank you. So it seems like there was an operational oversight rather than a process oversight. So the process still works. What's the lessons learned here so that we don't get into this again?
I'm gonna continue doing
Yeah,
the audit.
you weren't here.
No, exactly, through the chair. I'm gonna continue doing the audit I've been doing with a specific focus on panels. So this has come up a number of times in the last few months. It's come up as a direct result of questions I've been asking. So it shows that our processes now are working, that we are picking up the issues, and that we're able to go back and rectify them in retrospect. So this will continue to happen, and I'm really hoping I don't find any more.
Okay.
Is it based on the value of the contract? Is there a threshold that once it's beyond, it needs to go to full council for approval?
Yes, the normal council delegated financial authorities apply, and when we're looking at a panel, because we don't know where we're going to put the spend within that panel. I know it's an extreme example, but say we put all of our spend with half of the suppliers, then that could mean that we're actually spending a significant amount with each of those, and it's above the CE delegated or CME delegated authority. As it is, it will be more spread than that, but we can't guarantee that when we're going to the market. So we need the approval to go to market for that aggregated spend.
What is that threshold?
I'm sorry, the operational for the mayor and the CE. Yeah.
With that, do I have a move up? Thanks, Lyle. Thank you, Kevin. Any discussion? Vinnie?
Thanks. Yeah, look, I just, I think there's some concerns if this had been brought to us, we obviously could have sat through and worked through the procurement strategy and the requirements in it. And if we had wanted to look at, you know, the engagement councillors might have with the legal teams, we could have put that in there. So there's a couple of things that it's what's maybe missing from the plan because it doesn't have a any councillor perspective to it. And my other concern is that we may be just reappointing these same firms, and sometimes the relationship can get too comfortable, I guess, from my perspective. You know, say we always get objective legal advice, but sometimes we don't get to see it. I've requested legal advice and been told, no, you can't see it. Here is QLDC's position based on the legal advice, because the councillors aren't trusted with it. I don't know whether that's the position of the staff or the position of the people supplying the advice. So if the advice is intended for the council, including us, then I'd like to see a procurement plan that had a council perspective within it and the understanding that we are needing this advice to make good decisions. So I have some concerns with how this is all fleshed out. So if someone changes their mind, I probably won't be approving this one. I would like the opportunity to relook at it.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I'm happy with the my understanding from reading is that there was only the audit picked up the approval process, and there was no indication that the procurement plan or it was carried out was not done. It was done with probity, and yeah, we can go for a witch hunt and try and rebuild all this, but it's been identified, been picked up on. We move forward, and we'll be addressing it when it comes around next time. So yeah, let's move on.
And with that, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Aye. Against? One. Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6, Queenstown Lakes Waste Management and Minimisation Plan 2025. Page 222. Yes, actually. Yeah, excited you are. Go for it.
All right. Firstly, I'd like to thank the numerous stakeholders who participated in extensive early engagement, the elected members who participated on the working group, the submitters who responded through public consultation, and the councillors who sat on the hearing panel, and of course, the internal efforts by staff across our organisation. With the efforts of all of us, the tabled report now presents the QLDC Waste Management and Minimisation Plan 2025 for adoption, which is a requirement of councils under the Waste Minimisation Act. So following early engagement with stakeholders, the draft plan was publicly consulted in June this year and we received 68 submissions. Feedback demonstrated strong community support for the plan's direction, particularly in regards to organic and construction production, investment in infrastructure and the support for an expansion of waste busters. Submitters also sought stronger focus on the prevention of waste, increased education and increased enforcement, and establishing more formalised partnerships with aligned community organisations and stakeholders such as the tourism sector. The hearings panel received all submissions, including verbal submissions, on the 24th of July and recommended a series of amendments. These include expanded focus areas into the visitor waste reduction strategy opportunities, the recognition of social enterprise as a stakeholder in the waste system, defining and establishing partnership models to improve collaborative ways of working, and a variety of wording improvements. So the final plan is attached reflects these improvements. Adoption of the plan will ensure Council meets all of its statutory obligations, secures continued access for Ministry for the Environment Waste Levy funding, and it provides us with a clear roadmap for future priorities. So I invite any questions.
Questions, councillors? No questions, I'll go straight to, do I have a mover? Thank you, Cody.
You got Gavin.
Gavin seconding. Well done. Well done. No. Chairperson and a committee member second. So it's brilliant. Discussion.
Yeah, look, just to acknowledge the work, and I mean, that waste management is way more than taking rubbish to the tip, and we, along with our partners Wastebusters, I did see we're in the room just before, representative of, you know, we are a bit of a leader in this space at times, and it's really, yeah, good to see, and we've show a lot of innovation, so well done. And I think if the public really saw the extent of what goes on across every different part of waste management in our district, they'd be very surprised. Right down to where we sell our recycling and, you know, how do we promote initiatives that reduce or reuse materials and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, further discussion. Oh, you gave it before Cody closes it out.
Oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, just thank you, and thanks for engaging with us really early. I know that was so involved and we didn't really participate in that, which was certainly ideal. But yeah, it was great to get the opportunity. I think you've done it with great content, but I really like that it's really usable in the plan. Like I don't think it's going to packages sure. So well done, thanks.
You want to say anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say something. So I really enjoyed working on this one too, and I think the plan is really easy to follow. And it's and the whole concept of waste management and minimization is a learning curve for almost all of us, I should think. And this is a point, you know, puts a marker on the road for people to start from. Some people are already on that journey. Other people won't even have thought about it yet, but it's really easy to follow, and it's like I say, encouraging that it's so easy to follow it. And I was going to say as well that there was a lot of support for what Wastebusters are doing here, and also there was even a comment about having something similar to Wastebusters in Queenstown. So we get in some stage we were doing so.
Just to echo everybody else's, I think this plan is such a great marker of how it can be done really well through collaboration, how it can be accessible to everybody, and bringing the partners with us. So really proud of the work that you guys have done. And I think it's moved a lot of momentum in the space for other stakeholders as well to really come to the table and think new ideas. And it started a lot of conversations that I've been involved with recently. So it's just an awesome show of leadership in this respect, and just really stoked with how it's done. So well done.
Well, that's it. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? None. Motion carried. Thank you, team.
Fantastic.
Number 7, Monica Refuge Transfer Station, page 201. You speaking? You, Andrew, or
Good afternoon, Wish Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Andrew Hill is my name, project manager in the infrastructure engineering space. Tabling for you today, report here on the Wanaka Refuse Transfer Station. Your consideration, the RTS project has been working through the preferred option identification and the concept design of that. Prior to progressing to the next design stage, we're seeking from council your endorsement to proceed to the detailed design of the preferred option. Also asking you to note that there's no sort of funding decision that we're taking from you today. There is an uplift in cost for the preferred option. Currently that is estimated at around 4.8 million. And the expectation though is that we can cover that funding within underspends on other projects within the LTP, most notably the new waste facility. The financial implications are continuing to be worked through for that, and the intention is at the next 26-27 annual plan that'll be fully costed out and included as part of that. Yeah, take the plan and take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Questions? Now,
Just on the cost that you were talking about, so are you talking about the full cost, the 4.8 and the 7.4 from other budgets, or just the 4.8 and then that 7.4?
So the 4.8 would be required in this sort of 10-year long-term plan in the current one. The 7.6, 7.8 is, we're anticipating that's a deferred piece of work in about 10 years time. So we anticipate about 36, 37. So it'll be in the following long term.
Yeah, just a couple of ones. So on page 2.7, you've said that budget will most likely come from, you give us a line item, sort of CP 0007200 new waste facilities.
Yep.
What is that?
It's my understanding it's the Glenda Drive grade works in Queenstown. Funding has been identified for that piece of work on the long term.
Sorry, so it's both the MRF work and the Wakatipu side transfer station upgrades.
Right, so this would be potentially taking funding out of that project.
Yeah, and I guess we have enough information at the moment to have confidence that we've got enough money into that to deliver on the objectives.
Okay. In terms of options, because obviously you said the previous plan sort of is fallen open, maybe and now we've got a business case. But have we, as the infrastructure committee, seen their business case, and because we've got no options in front of us, it's either do this or do nothing. But presumably was another option, and why do we not have another option?
Yeah, I guess there's been a process worked through over the last probably 2 to identify, I guess, the outcomes sought from the investment, and then looking at options to achieve those. There were a number of options considered, some of which were upgrading the current facility and improvements on the existing site. We also considered a totally off-site area, but the purchase of the adjacent land at the start of 2024 opened the opportunity for that to be considered. And throughout that analysis, in order to achieve the business case outcomes and investment objectives, we believe that what we've identified as the preferred option is the best way to achieve those.
Is there a reason that the options haven't come to the councillors or the infrastructure committee?
No, look, not really. To be honest, we've had since my involvement, we've had a preferred option, so we've been working through that, and I guess that's why I've been keen to bring that to this light to basically say this is the way we're heading. There was a lot of analysis that had been done previous to that as part of the business case development to arrive at that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's concerning that we haven't seen anything, or the infrastructure committee has not been involved in the process, and we've got a budget overrun. But also, this goes to my next question, you're recommending that we don't need to do any consultation either. So it's sort of a project that goes through with no oversight, no input from outside, it just makes me uncomfortable. And I guess my question would be, is there any, do you have anything to say that would seem like a good process?
I guess throughout the process, we've been engaging with a number of the real key stakeholders, Wastebusters, Wanaka Green Waste and Waste Management on site. Yeah, so we've certainly had a really good understanding of those, but I think and from my perspective, it comes back to I guess we're still aiming to achieve the intent of the long-term plan and the project outcome. It's just we deem that this is the most appropriate way to do that.
Okay. Just maybe note, the reason we're bringing this report to you is to get an understanding of the potential cost of this and getting agreement to that. This is not a decision about the preferred option, and it will be part of a LTP process for consultation. There's still a lot of work to be done, tease out the actual design, work through the options. We actually toyed about whether we brought this paper to you or not, but because of the significant potential funding implications into the future, we wanted to signal that we're going to carry on, but it still needs to come back. So there's no decision as part of this process.
But it's detailed design, so we're going down a path with this decision on one option rather than looking at other.
Different. So I guess with the options we've considered, building a new transfer station on an adjacent piece of land is the only option that delivers on all the objectives. So we can't actually create enough capacity, the growth we're anticipating within the existing site. So the only real options that deliver on the objectives identified are on the site. It comes down to then how big you build and on what staging.
Yeah, okay. And sort of last question around the size. Are there ways, if we said, you need to trim 10% off that or 20% off that, could you, before we proceed to detailed design, can we deliver anything else or change the staging, change the size, just to get it seen?
So at the end of the concept, we did go through a value engineering workshop and identify some of those elements that we can pick up early in the next stage. So one of the first activities in that detailed design is to go through those things like the pavement design and the areas that covers. We've interrogated the building envelope itself fairly detailed, but things like the pavement, which does carry a fairly solid cost, that we feel that we can refine those. I guess the other part of that is originally the project was as a whole, and I think we talked about a $23 million budget. We've been able to constrain what we think is the essential at this stage and defer what's that 7.6 million of funding, which we think is not needed at the initial construction, but potentially as the volumes grow, may be needed in the future. And I think deferring also gives us the opportunity that if some of the diversion activities between the RTS and Wastebusters and some of those other activities on site actually means that we don't need that space, then we haven't invested in that up front.
Yeah, thank you. And look, you touched on it very briefly then, but really just to reinforce that, have you thought about the whole of cycle process, that it's just going to be allow for this sort of one-stop shop where, a truck can come in and diversion of building materials can go one way, red top refuge can go to another way, and, we're investing in 30 years here, are we really going to be best practice in 30? Does this provide best practice for 30 years in terms of what opportunity for? We don't know where we're headed, but and obviously we know their plans around C&D recovery. We know the plans around expansion of the Wastebusters activities on site, but all those things have been factored in.
Yeah, as we've gone through the design process and the optioneering, we've worked closely with Wastebusters and some of the other users there on site to really understand their requirements and how they work throughout. Whilst the project here is focused on the refuse transfer station, you've certainly been cognizant of that, and I'm aware that Wastebusters are seeking additional space, and really think that by what we're doing and locating a new RTS central on that site, it does complement what Wastebusters are seeking to do there as well.
And probably just another part to add is it's an interesting trade-off, because one of the key things to help support diversion is actually having space to separate and stockpile materials before being taken away, and that's got a real tension with the cost. So one of the things we've looked at around the actual building itself is trying to get the right size for 30 years, because that's a long-lived piece of infrastructure. We don't want to build it too small now, because that will cost more in the long.
So as when we spoke previously with the community board, there was concern about just making sure that we're funding what we need to fund through this. This is waste transfer, but planning and working for interaction and integration with the other diversion activities. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Good questions. Happy to move, thank you. We have a seconder. Thank you, Mel. Open for discussion, Nikki.
Yeah, look, I get where you're coming from with the general project, with maybe as no other major option. I just hope that maybe through the detailed design process, there may be some options within the larger project that can be looked at. And again, it might be bigger to play that as it says, or it might be less to reduce costs. I also have some concerns about taking from the new project. Just wondering where that's at, and just concerned how that might limit options, scope for delivery of that down the track. So, yeah, and also around consultation, I haven't thought too deeply about it, but it would be helpful for staff to hear about that. Maybe it's not needed, but yeah, we start to get calls, I suppose, about concerns, and maybe, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, remind me, you bought the land out there, it was a bit of a game changer. And I agree the first figure we were given with the price increase was a bit eye-watering. I think you worked very well. You talked to the community board, you talked to the infrastructure committee, you've taken on board some of the feedback. I like the idea that the way it's been staged in a responsible way with the money. And I know you're taking money from that line, but there's some big figures in that line that you're taking the money from. I know Murph will cost a lot of money, but in year 3, there's $18 million sitting in there, and I don't know. So I feel a bit more comfortable if we have to take a little bit from that to get on with this, and get the transfer station started in that first stage. So I encourage you to get on with it, and look forward to the more detailed design.
Soft Cody, no further discussion. Go for it.
Thank you for touching base. It's nice. I feel like from my perspective, you have a license to proceed with pace. So I want to make sure that it's fit for purpose and done right. And given the urgency of these kinds of facilities, I think we're more supportive with moving at a decent pace. So thank you for bringing it back, and happy to support it.
Okay, with that, vote. All those in favour? Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. 16. Item 8. Asset management policy updates. Ellie. Page 262. Adrian. Adrian. Take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us. So you've got Alison Tomlinson here, the strategic asset manager from property and infrastructure, and Adrian Top from community and services. So today I'll take the report as read, but I did want to highlight a few items to you all that are key in the new updated policy. So the policy supports a step change in strategic asset management QLDC across both the property and infrastructure and the community and services directorate. And it's really strong in that cross-council collaboration. The aim is to deliver fit-for-purpose integrated asset management that supports the well-being of an evolving community while balancing levels of service, risk and cost efficiency. The policy sets out principles and goals that we'll be applying in the management of our assets, as well as the roles and responsibilities across the organisation. This policy is not just a nice-to-have document, it's a core requirement of meeting the International Standard 55001. Council have beefed up their strategic asset management, particularly in the property and infrastructure department, and we're working really closely with community and services. Driving continuously improved asset management maturity so that we can better inform our investment through the annual plan and the long-term plan. Thank you.
This asset management policy is a key part in bringing sexy back.
I think that was a quote from one of the ministers, was it Chris Busher?
Well, I believe the minister said it wasn't sexy. And we're looking to change that.
Can see that.
Right.
You see why you handled that comment over there.
He was dying to say. Yeah, so I guess we look to for you guys to adopt our recommendation in the minutes too.
A little bit scared to open it up. I'll open it up for questions. Let's try and keep it above board the councillors. But yeah.
Well, a simple little question, Alison. How big is the asset management team you've put in place? How big is your asset management team that you have now in place?
We've now, the recent was at the end of 2024, the P&I review brought together the asset management teams that sat sort of distributed across the P&I portfolio. So now we have, under the new strategic asset management team, sits an asset management team for property, one person, and then it's got 3 waters, which includes solid waste management and transport. So yeah, it's about 11 altogether across each of those activities.
Your asset management system, is that a standard system used in other parts?
You're talking about technology?
Yeah, technology.
Yeah. So the asset, we talk about an asset management system, which is made up of the people, your systems.
I mean, technology.
But yeah, so at the moment we do have a combination of systems in place. So we have a corporate solution, which is technology one, for the majority of the assets. Yeah.
Okay, and obviously you interact with obviously all the capital works and then the contractors like Downers and that in a big way. Is that right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess the one of the most important things of asset management is knowing what assets we have. And so when we get new assets, we work really closely with anybody that provides new assets, whether that's from a capital works, whether it's from a new development, greenfield development, and then throughout the life of the asset. So working with the maintenance contractors, so Sutton Mason's team, Ben and Andy.
So what's your engagement connection with what you do and the development of the renewables program?
Yeah, so that's probably one of the biggest functions of asset management is to understand the asset base, understand what that future state is going to look like and how much renewals money we're going to need. So what's the condition? How do we expect it to perform based on the material and the life of the asset?
Thank
you.
I note that a POPO or infrastructure public works put a lot of emphasis around our future investment being asset management led, where perhaps we've tended towards more of a planning strategic approach. How do you think QLDC sits in the balance of our investment prioritisation?
I'm interested in this answer.
I mean, I guess we're very fortunate that, we have invested in the team for asset management. I think there has been a realisation, when we talk about asset management's not just done by the team who have asset management in their label. Anyone who's involved in planning, delivering, disposal of assets, that's asset management in itself. And I think the investment in our new team, strategic asset management team, means that we can connect across all of those elements. Our asset management really plays a connector across the organisation stream.
I think, it's been a big step in that sense, but also refocus the strategy infrastructure planning team, start working at those broader network issues. And we're not where we want to be. We've still got a little bit of a way to go, but it is very much relying on good asset management systems. Our contracts that we're issuing now have an explicit requirement to provide asset data into the system. Adrian's, the community service major contracts are providing that sort of information. So we're getting better at it, but it's not a complete duty. Also
blending our planning around looking after what we've got as a priority over investing in the new stuff.
Well, I think it's
kind of have to strike the balance somewhere in between that.
I think it'll always be a balance, but I think firstly it's understanding what we've got, understanding what our constraints are, and understanding where we need to invest, both in terms of maintaining levels of service, but also increasing catering for growth. How do we do that? And having good information and good systems, and most importantly, really good people in the team to interpret, take that data, get the information and turn it into knowledge. That's the critical component, and that's where we're sort of investing quite a bit of time and effort, both in asset, but also in the community service team. So it is very much across the major asset owner classes.
Yeah, if I could add to that, I think that it was really reassuring in the last LTP to see that focus on getting the basics right with maintaining our investment in renewals and maintenance, because that's really.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So the current policy is about a decade old now.
Yeah.
It says in the report about international best practice and is it ISO 55001, which sounds like a boring can of worms.
Oh, amazing.
The question is, how does a policy keep up? It's around for 10 years.
Yes, well, I mean, I think we probably, hopefully in the report recognises that, you know, basic asset management perhaps doesn't change, but there's definitely been organisational changes that the policy need to reflect. There was a recent update to 55,000, which just changes some of the principles and goals that we're trying to achieve. So I think what this new policy really does is keeps us up in line with the update to 55,000. And it just really recognises the change that we've had in council. You know, council have got a strategic framework, and the principle is really important about connecting kind of those strategic aspirations of our organisation with actually how do we operationally deliver service.
So I think it's probably it's a great question because it links actually the very first item this afternoon. Unless we do that, start that long-term strategic planning, long-term infrastructure planning, asset management planning, it's all part of building that really sound network that says we know where we're going and we're making ultimately through the LTP the right investment at the right time. So you know it is part of actually ensuring that we have a very strong strategic approach to you know to infrastructure, and it's very important for us because there is so much growth that's going on at a pace that it's really easy to be caught out by that. So the work that Alison's team does, community services do, are vital to actually make sure that we have a good, strong picture of it.
Yeah.
I've just got one question just on the actual wording of the policy. So this is on page 269 of the agenda, guiding principle 6, just A. So it's ensuring that services and infrastructure are provided in a financially sustainable manner with the appropriate levels of service to customers and the environment. Is that level of service to the environment, or is that protection to, like, so just to me doesn't make sense what we're referring to with the environment there.
I think that's trying to reflect the, you know, I guess the approach to climate and biodiversity covered in that plan.
I don't know, it just doesn't read like can we say protection of the environment or with regards to the environment? Because to me that could go either way, the way that it's written.
Yeah, I mean,
like I don't know. I mean, I guess the question is, what is the intent, and is that reflecting the intent? And I'm not quite sure that it would be reflecting my intent.
okay, I would say the intent is to reflect that we have the appropriate levels that protect the people as well as the environment that we live in.
Can we add in protect the environment in there? Would that be problematic?
We put in, sorry, you put in the protection of the environment?
Yeah, that would read better, and I felt like that was what the intent, and that's how I read the intent, and that I'm happy with that. Thank
you. Thanks. Have these been workshops with councillors?
No, they have not.
Right.
We had the workshop that went through the policy, but we didn't go in detail through each of the guiding
because this
principles.
is quite important, as everybody's saying.
So the policy has been with workshop with councillors?
Yes.
Policy, full policy, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we took it to the I can't remember which date it was, but
okay, I can't remember going through this. That's okay. Right. So as a result of this, as obviously if we're agreeing this, we're agreeing to a strategic implementation plan. Is that what we're calling it?
Yes, so supporting strategic asset management.
The strategic asset management plan, which will be signed off by the ELT, not the council. And this is very high level, right?
Yeah.
In terms of when we set up for the LTP and we assign proportions to renewals and level of service of growth, is that something that's done via this team?
Yeah. Well, so for the maintenance and renewals budgets mainly come through.
So we're deciding how much sits with level of service and how much sits with
so that proportionate split would be developed through the LTP more generally. So we would the role of each of the activity asset management managers is to, I guess, put forward the best case for the investment in the levels of maintenance and renewals that's best for their activity, and then it would move to more of a LTP discussion to balance that across the portfolio.
Okay. Just for clarity, who decides on how much of a project is attributed to level of service versus growth versus renewals.
So that's generally recommended by the project manager.
Okay.
In each individual
That's
project.
great. And in terms of best practice and ISO standards and so on, is it normal to have the board or council sit at this high level and not have oversight over the strategic planning and how this is influenced, how this is implemented? Because I'm just looking at these and they're very, very high level and very subjective and could be interpreted in a number of ways, like setting levels of service.
Yeah, so the levels of service, what we would say is this is supposed to be high level, and then each of those individuals would come through the governance process. So when we're setting levels of service, the intent would be that through the development of the individual asset management plans, they would come through to probably infrastructure committee or whatever the recommended governance pathway would be to determine the levels of service and so on. So this isn't setting the levels of service, this is saying the intent to deliver fit for purpose, and they would then individually go through that governance process.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Just indicating that this feels very high level and it's so important. I think it would be useful to have councillors have oversight of the plan.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I would probably say that one of the incentives is with the new asset management team is to closely align with the 5,000 process, which would be getting more governance involvement in the development of the asset management plan so that they're signed off.
Sorry, more involvement with the asset management plan, but not with the so with the strategic asset management plan you're talking about.
So the strategic asset management plan is more of a like an operational manual of what we do and how we apply the international standard to what we do. The asset management plans themselves are what would set the levels of service.
Right.
So
okay.
that's the one that really would drive the governance input into what levels of service we have. And what we
and should that direction not be sitting within this policy then?
No, I think this is a very high level policy.
Well, that's what I mean. So
it won't go any, this is out of the appropriate.
No, but that is a high level principle, is that the governance team will be involved in asset management plans. Where else would it sit other than in the policy?
Well, it wouldn't sit in the policy in my view.
So it would just sit in someone's
It's an
mind as a
operational
maybe. I guess the point is that if we have things set in our processes, then they haven't. If they're just mentioned as intent, then sometimes they don't. So if there is a principle of going forward and involving councillors with asset management plans, then maybe that's something that we should be writing into a policy.
At the moment, policy does not include that level of detail.
It would just be a principle. There are principles in there.
Just a question through the chair. Given that we've got big changes coming up with the Water Services CCO, how does this policy influence formation of that CCO?
In many respects, it's kind of agnostic as to whether it's in council or CCO, but it does set a very clear benchmark of what will be transferred across to the CCO. The CCO is likely to have the same adherence to the same asset management principles. So it's very much about making sure that we've got very solid strategic asset management plans over to the CCO at that point. That is critical part, as well as everything else, about having that very clear understanding of what we've got. Alison,
Okay. With that, do I have a mover? Thanks, Gavin. I'll have you second. Discussion?
Just that's including the change.
Yeah. Any discussion? Okay.
Look, I see how this affects me. It's very high level. Oh, I'm sorry. It's very high level, and look, we haven't worked through the principles to understand how they really are likely to be implemented. I feel like we're handing over a lot of power to the executive leadership team to approve the strategic asset management plan sitting beneath. I think that needs more oversight from us around the table, and I think we need to workshop these guiding principles and make sure they're not subjective, make sure that we're giving enough direction through those principles to the ELT, if it is the ELT that's going to be signing off on the strategic plan. I don't feel like this does good governance at all. But I think it's a great idea that you're having a strategic asset management plan. It's just where the level of control and oversight sits. And I think we've passed it down too far, given that the importance of this in terms of you know, setting the LTP and the impact on rates and the impact on levels of service and all of those things, they're so critical, as everybody's saying. I think the governance team looks like so.
Close it.
Yeah, so I'm supporting it. I mean, it's work and it brings up our policy into, you know, today current best practice and international standards. So, very much.
With that, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Motion carried. Thanks, Steve. Reese.
Yeah, doing our best.
Reselling contract budget approval and award 1 year. Page 274. Maybe. Take it away.
Very long past week. Very long past week. That's what he's typing. He knows very well what. He wrote poems.
PASS.
It's really hard to write. Adrian is making asset management plans sexy.
Take my beat. Understood.
Just like really brief explanation for questions. The report seeks council's approval for an amendment to the employment plan for the district-wide reselling contract currently held by Downer. The key highlights in the report, road resealing is a critical component of council's road infrastructure renewals and asset management, as we've just heard. The inflation of business over the post-COVID period requires step change in our budgets to avoid a reduction in quantity of reselling delivered. And that was worked through with NZTA through the National Land Transport Fund process and our LTP process. And so that uplift of budgets hit us in approximately December. And as we're midway through contract that's currently in process, we now need to reflect those uplifted budgets if we want to continue to work in the extension to Downer's.
Questions?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so you touched on the bitumen price, which you said has gone up 57% in 2 years or something. Is that right? Well, that's extraordinary. And so that, if I understand correctly, that's largely tied to oil prices, though. Is it? What's the driver behind that? Do you know, or is it just the market? It's just the market.
I think there's a lot that goes into those prices that I
we don't make it anymore.
No.
We've shut down most of it.
Oh, right, that's right.
So it's all imported.
Okay, so
there's an index that tracks all the various factors, and that's what's going on.
Yeah, no, I do recall that. Yeah. So you touched on two things. One is that the escalations, which you touched on with bitumen prices and things, and then the second is that we're not achieving enough of our resealing in a given year. And then, so I just can't get an exact grip of what, you know, what, how much of the escalations and how much of the increase in the amount of work that we're needing to achieve in the cost increase.
It's a good question. When the budgets were set, the resealing achievement was in the order of 5 to 6% per year, and that implies a seal life of 15 or so years, which is quite a normal standard expected life of the seal. And when the tender prices were received for this contract with a similar uplift as expected through the market movements, that percentage achievement will have dropped down to somewhere around 3%, implying a seal life of about 30 years, which is unrealistic if we carry on with that level of budget. So we then talked to NZTA about that. We got their support to have the budgets uplifted with the council LTP process also. So those budgets are now closer to 1 per
instead of onto
And presumably obviously the only way that we can ensure appropriate renewals is by doing a bit each year and doing an appropriate amount each year. How much, people often make the comment that road didn't need to be resealed yet. What assurance can you give us that, to the general public, that we're doing it in a cycle that is absolutely scientific and or justified?
Yeah, that's a good question as well, and there's an asset management process that we work through to have all of the roading assets firstly captured in an asset database. Conditions and lives are known and understood. We then have routine visual inspections. We have vehicles right around capturing data like rutting, cracking, and other faults and defects, and all that builds up a model which then is field validated on a 3-year and 10-year cycle to give us assurance that the work that appears on 3-year or 1-year out programs is validated.
And this is just
In fact, not me. I'm going to actually ask Alison to speak. Alison's in fact the national lead on road asset management. So, Ali, do you want to make a comment? I mean, Ben's given the sort of the default version, but you can talk from a system level.
You did a great description of that. I guess, we follow best practice in this space. We do deterioration modelling, so it's identified. We know what roads we have, we know what material they're made of, and yet we know when they were last done. And so what we've done is the model runs through the different types of treatments you can apply to a road and works out what the best kind of scenario would be for investment. So most of our roads last anywhere between 8 to 10 years. And so we can kind of work out based on the quantities we have, making sure that we take into account high growth, because obviously that's going to have an impact on the long-term kind of strategic amounts that we need. And I guess, Penton, to your point about someone said, sometimes it looks like we're doing roads when they don't need doing. The thing that's really important to remember is sometimes we don't just do the worst roads. The worst roads often need to be rehabbed, so they need to be all dug out and redone. So it's really important, particularly in our district, because we have those fluctuating high and low temperatures. Sometimes, you have cracks showing, and so we need to make sure that our roads are waterproof, and that's really the key function of all the chip sealing that we do. And so we need to make sure that those roads, we're covering up those cracks so water doesn't get in. Because probably one of the biggest issues we have in our road network is water gets in, we have free stored, and then suddenly you have these major failures. And so we have to, in this district particularly, keep on top of waterproof roads.
Thank you.
Never asked him actually to.
Yeah. No, look, like I said, I think the principle that our community don't always understand is if we wait till there's potholes in the road, it's actually too late, it's ineffective and not cost efficient, and we do this for a reason, but thank you.
Thank you. Just wondering how we benchmark this, and I guess for the public to try and understand this as well. With your high bitumen inflation, and you've only had 2 bidders, are we stuck in a position where we're just going to suck it up, or how do we get best value out and ensure we are getting good value from this?
It's a good question. So we ran a competitive tender process and we got 2 bidders. We are testing this in the near future through our road maintenance contract renewal, where the resealing program is potentially going to be included as part of that. So it might open up the process to more bidders at that time if we get more bidders for that contract. That's one of the strategies that we're testing. Otherwise, if there's only 2 suppliers that work in the region, there's not much we can do to attract more if the workload in the region doesn't justify it.
Is it hard to benchmark if we're getting a good deal compared to anywhere else around the country? Or
I think the best benchmark is those the indexes where the bitumen index, for example, quoted by 57%, and our tender prices have gone up required. Similar.
Yeah. Okay, so sounds like
But it is tough. It is tough to benchmark it accurately when we're getting tree prices.
But I, through the chair, just add to that, this is not an issue that council, QLDC alone is facing. There has been a bit of benchmarking around the country, and every council is facing this issue. And I guess to give you a bit of assurance, Ben's contract delivers about a 6% renewal rate, which is fairly standard. And unfortunately, you don't want to go much below that. And so when you go to a competitive tender, that's what it costs. That's probably the best benchmark in terms of costing.
to you.
Well,
Yeah, thanks to the chair. Just a question on the dollars. The 4.428 in the for 2025, 26 up to, is that does that include the carry forward we just signed off on in the earlier home for $1 million or 999,000 was carried forward to 25, 26 for reselling? And I just my figures looks like we haven't actually got it in there. Or is that, can you explain that, or is there I got it wrong?
So the carry forward is inserted into the 2024-25 line in the budget table on paragraph 16. It's $1.5 million noted, and that includes $1 million on the resale line and about $500,000 reallocated from the unsealed line yearly budgets.
Oh, okay. I just thought in the carry forward item it had it going into 25, 26, not 24, 25.
Booked it as 24, 25.
Okay. I'll update my spreadsheet. Oh yeah.
Was that?
Yeah, that's good.
Did you have a yeah, just it's partly been answered, but just in terms of the road inspections and where and when resealing should take place, is that done independently or is it done by the contractor?
It's done by both QLDC and an independent consultant. And often we include a process that has happened here annually for the last 7 years, but it's not guaranteed to happen. It's called a RAS tool that includes NZTA and sometimes even a attendee from another council around the country that NZTA on it. So there's quite a, I guess I would say, quite a rigorous process of validating the proposed program. The NZTA are involved in, so it's not part funded this year. So they insert their own people into these processes around the country. We have, I think, is in October, Alison, we have one of these happening again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess to add to that, we actually undertake machine surveys on the network. I think Ben did reference having big trucks. Might have previously seen a big yellow truck driving around the network. So that is a machine that has a number of, technical measurements on it, lasers and all sorts of things on it, and it basically picks up all these defects. So it's repeatable, it's consistent, it's done all over, it's calibrated across the whole country. So actually the key drivers or inputs into what would trigger a treatment is actually done by a machine, and then the prioritisation is made by the engineering judgment by a combination of the things that Ben just referenced. Oh, you'll just keep saying it.
Not Ben.
Sorry. Any further questions? Going back in time to an undergraduate entrance course, but here we go. I'll put, do I have a mover, please? Thank you, Barry. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Gavin. Any discussion? With that, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? None. Motion carried. Thank you, team. Sorry, team. Reward settlement. Page 296. Papers. Andy, Simon, Tony, who's doing the speaking?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Everybody. We're here this afternoon to seek approval for the procurement plan. You should receive the paper. The current contract runs out on the 30th of June 2026, sorry, 2027, and the new contract needs to be in place. So we need to meet some key milestones. We're currently revamping the existing contract, and we're looking to go out to market by March of 2026 next year, and hopefully award by October in 2026. This would give the contract or contractors enough time to resource and probably one of the most important things is the integration of the IT systems between the companies. Probably could be the possible things of the tender. So it's a very important contract for obviously for Queenstown, and it's very important that we get this contract right. It's needed to be rewritten for a few years now, so we've just started that process now. Now there is we've got another contract with the incumbent contractor is Veolia Water, and there are some bolt-on contracts, one of which is the Cardrona water and wastewater treatment plants. We also want to bring that under the umbrella of the new contract as well. So this will give us an ideal opportunity to be able to do that.
All good. So this was all brought to us in a workshop. Was it 2 weeks ago? Work we going 2 weeks ago. So open up to questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This might be for the chief executive. It says the recommendation 3, delegation authority up to a maximum value. And then it refers to defined in the procurement plan, but I can see an estimated value, and I don't see a maximum value. Can you point me to what is the maximum value specified in there, and is that an appropriate thing to, or should we be defining that in the resolution?
I think you can define the resolution, but ultimately the procurement plan will demonstrate what the market actually comes back with. So at this stage, we don't know exactly what the market's going on.
The point is, the resolution doesn't specify that. It says up to a maximum value. I don't know what that is, because if the market comes back with something that's higher than what we've estimated, I don't know what I'm authorising. Notwithstanding, it's a big contract, but I don't know what that maximum value I'm authorising is.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable question. The intent was under 2.3 of the procurement plan, we've got the OPEX and CAPEX allocations, so those will see as being the maximum values.
Page 311.
So the estimated values under 2.3.
That was the intent.
Is the maximum values that are referred to in. If the market comes back at higher than that, what happens?
Need to come back to the council.
Okay, so is that clear? Is it clear that the maximum value in I don't think it is, because I don't think that it's clear that the maximum we're authorising relates to 2.3. And I'll leave that with you for a sec as to how we can resolve that. The other question I had is, have we made appropriate provision within the procurement plan for holding contractors to account for compliance with consent conditions, for instance, and the operator of our system or whatever, or who's at fault when something goes wrong?
Yeah, so I guess the procurement plan is not the contract
Not the
specification.
contract.
So yeah, we work through the KPIs as we develop the contract specification. That'll be a key area of focus.
Is that something that you're conscious of
Very
at the
much
moment? Thank you. And have we got any further guidance on the maximum value issue? Or do you want to come back to me after more questions, or what's the?
Come back to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, yeah, just wanted to explore a bit more about the separable portions, that's in paragraph 14, page 298. So it says two separable portions within the contract. This will allow for contractors to price either or both separable portions to generate the broader range. So my contract administration experience is getting a little bit old now, but can those two separable portions, or they normally be under a single contract? If you're looking at the prices for two contractors, would they be under a single contract?
No, there would be then become two contracts, two different contract or.
Yeah, so does that then take it away from being two separate portions of one contract into two separate contracts?
So if that was to be how the respondents were evaluated, we'd end up with two contracts.
Right.
Okay. So then what we're trying to maintain is that ability for the tier ones that will be looking for scale to be able to price both.
So if someone prices both, that would be a single contract with two separate contracts. If you get individual contractors pricing either, then they'll be as two separate contracts. That's what I was thinking in my mind. Wasn't what I was reading. The only other question, which I think I asked at the workshop, but just to explain again, obviously the process that this is going through is happening at the same time as we're setting up the CCO, we'll service the CCO. So the intention, and I think it does say in there, is that this contract or contracts as it's set up will be novated to this support services CCO.
Yeah, correct. And depending on timing, it may be that QLDC is never the principal to these contracts, it may be the CCO.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, just I guess I'm agree, but concerned that was linked with the proposed water services CCO and how that procuring a long-term contract will dovetail in with that new organisation.
So I guess in response to that, we need to keep business operating. We already, in response to the previous government's reforms, extended the contracts. We cannot extend them anymore. It's time to go back and test the market and rewrite the contract that Aaron pointed out in his introduction. So yeah, we can't afford to not do something here. First term of the contract is 5 years. That does allow the CCO within a relatively short window in the timeframes of a utility business to make other decisions if this doesn't suit them. But we are making the best decisions on the information in front of us, and we don't really expect that the CCO would make a different decision at this juncture.
Presuming we would make this contract would be novated over to the CCO. Sorry, I just thought that.
You haven't asked that question just before.
I move we just adjourn for the next 10 minutes while the officers sort out. Yeah. Well, check. In the meeting, let's move on to moving and seconding the resolution before us. I suggest the proposed resolutions before you. We remove 3 and 4, replace with the new 3. That's staff report. The recommended tender to council for approval. So leave it at that.
Thank you.
1, 2, and 3. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Gammon. Seconder. Thank you, Barry. Discussion?
Only that, thank you for addressing that. I think with these large contracts, it's appropriate that we don't have an open-ended delegation and we end up with a final number, and that has in the past been the practice I was aware of with council, so I'm happy for whoever landed on it.
Just that, yeah, support what we just said.
Okay, that's it. All those in favour? Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. T. Yeah. Item 11. Stormwater easements over reserve located either side of Milwaukee, Queenstown Road, Fernville, Queenstown. Oh, Eric, thanks away.
As the title describes, it's another stormwater easement over a reserve. Happy to take the report as read and answer any questions if it works.
Questions?
Page 230. Paragraph 8. Says, now we're in. On the final line, it says all that the rights of the public of the reserve are permanently affected. Should there be a not in there? Not permanently affected?
Quite possibly, yes. I think it's the same. This isn't the primarily or not materially alter or not the rights of the reserve.
Oh, actually, got it off the beginning here.
Yeah, so I think
just
should have done
for-
that.
Hang on. So, what's the outcome of that question?
So not materially alter or permanently damage the reserve or the rights of the public.
So if you read it, so the Reserves Act 1977 requires proposed easements are notified if the rights of the public with respect to the reserve are permanently affected. That's the way that it reads, which I think is right. I think it reads correctly. So if you take out the bit between the commas.
Yeah.
So requires the proposed easements are notified if the rights of the public with respect to reserves are permanently affected. Yeah, that is right. You're overruled here.
No,
That's about it.
there's an or in there.
Yeah, so it's either it's the bit before the comma or the bit after that applies, and the bit after is the rights are affected.
It's probably made because it's reflecting a requirement of the Reserves Act anyway. The wording of it doesn't change to the type of reserve.
I think it's good, right?
It's essentially parroting the reserves act. See,
The other question I had was, so there's more stormwater proposed, so you can through this bigger older. And it talks about damage, but there's been an assessment that easement's granted and the work happens about what happens when that stormwater carries on down the easement and whether it's scoured or not, but you're aware.
I think, well, the resource consent, I can't speak too much to the resource consent, but familiarise yourself with it, and stormwater was the main concern for the resource consent. It's taking a long time to reach the conclusion. The volume of stormwater, because of the subdivision development, is going to be greater. There are two options that they had. One is to leave, but the volume is going to be the same regardless what the option is. It's whether or not there's a greater volume going at a slower, but when you're going through the reserve, it's kind of the same regardless. It's just the volume is greater, but the velocity is consistent. And they have looked at the reserve and it's going over an existing overland flow path. It's really just having to put culverts under the public trail which in this case it's a wider culvert, whereas the other option is to have a narrow culvert but a lower, slower velocity.
I guess the question really is, relates back to that notification from it, is that this work has the potential to cause damage to.
So through to paragraphs 3, 4, and 5, provide some detail around the consenting process that we're considering. This request doesn't deal with the effects of the stormwater consenting process, so I'm assuming it's dealt with there. So proposition for the moment is do you grant the easement or not for a consented activity.
So yeah, so you're not notifying on the basis that there needs to be a resource consent with that will deal with that potential for all
They
that
will not
litigation.
notify because there's no effect on public. I think is what's being said.
Position is that there's not going to be the rights of the public in respect to the reserve are not going to be fundamentally altered, and that there's no material damage to the reserve because it's going to have an existing flow path which is designed to have, is assessed to have the capacity to handle.
And I'll draw your attention to paragraph 10, where there's a specific comment from the reserves team. We are considered this. I say the new rights to drain water services will not affect this rights in respect to reserves or materially damaging involved reserve. So
I think there's a slightly question that comes to mind as a result of that is there's an additional discharge of stormwater, is that right? And that includes to the watercourse and to the lake ultimately. So is there an ORC issue around a consent regarding discharge of stormwater?
I think if you think about it, there's a catchment and there's rain falling into that catchment and that is going down. That's a consistent regardless of the development.
Is there a change to pre-development flows, I suppose is what I'm asking.
So again, this is not a question
in
respect of this paper. You're asking a question of the consenting
well, that's what
process.
I'm asking. Is there an additional? I mean, can we? I don't know. To highlight that
the consent was granted. The consent would address the stormwater condition, which would look at the impact on the receiving environment and both the velocity. What we're saying is there a right to are we granting a right to transfer that across a piece of public land, which already exists in some states.
It's already known land flow path. In fact, I'm just seeking to formalise what's already occurring.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
So isn't it's a natural valley sort of, is it, I mean, can you describe what we're looking at? It's not a concrete channel or
it's a rocky
it's a rocky valley.
it's a depression that goes all the way down to the lake, and it's been an overland flow path for almost how many years? A natural say, but it does have stormwater has been directed through there already by council. There's a number of flow paths along that road. Because water goes down, has to go somewhere.
So I'm just not clear on, did the resource consent process consider the potential impacts on the environment, including the lake, the impact potentially on that valley, rocky culvert? Did it do that and say, yes, it's all fine if you get the easement through the council, the impacts on the environment are less than
yes, I've read the resource consent. The engineers spent a lot of time looking at the two options of the system, and from the source to the discharge to the lake has been looked at as part of that assessment. I haven't gone into it in any detail. I trust that this is a process which might undertake under the RMA and it has passed all the tests. But I can't talk to it in any great detail.
Why would they have looked at? So you're saying they definitely said discharge to the lake, not an issue for the lake. They definitely looked at it. I'm just trying because it's offsite.
Can we just concentrate on
Well,
the decision is at hand?
Well, it impacts
the resource consent stuff is out of scope for this decision. We just stick to the decision we've got. Please. Okay.
I think I can probably clarify this in the context that there is a catchment. Water falls into that catchment. There is now going to be development in that catchment. The same amount of water and the same volume of discharge is going to be the same. This deals with the mechanics of the velocity that the resource consent deals with. When it gets to the lake, that's still occurring. We're talking about an easement for that path to formalise what is fundamentally occurring and will occur.
It's continued to occur. Yeah, any further questions? Okay, do I have a mover? Thank you, Matt. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Lisa. Discussion. Okay.
I've got some concerns about it. I probably should have told that to ADOX and gone through that concerning process to give some clarity around what was considered and what wasn't, because it's not in the report, so it's hard to understand the implications of my decision if I vote to allow this. I guess I'm just concerned that we're channeling water that can have an impact. I don't really understand from this what the capacity of that gully is to take it. In terms of, you know, future and climate change and increasing flows, it's just a bit murky around what the consequences of my decision are on this. And I'm not sure where this ends in terms of how many people can develop and discharge to this point. We've got no treatment on that site. We've got urban flows. It's not going to ground as it was. And just there's so many questions, so I feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I had some concerns, but it does clearly say here, you know, when you're developing a land, taking away usually some of the ability for that stormwater to soak into the ground, and you're discharging it all into those channels. But you know, it does say in this report that third option council engineers who have looked at that part under the reasons consent to upgrade these culverts and use the existing overland flow paths. So on that basis, satisfies the query of
that. I'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Motion carried. Thanks, Steve. Well, keep executives reports. Page 36.
There's three items in this report. Tony's here to speak to item, which is really alerting council to the fact that we've got we're having to spend additional monies to complete the Robbins Road wastewater compliance upgrade. That's proved to be a more complex and difficult project than was scoped. We will be funding that through the budget adjustment in December, but in terms of timing to enable the works to continue, we're basically just advising you that it's that's how we intend to manage the cost increase. The second one deals with part of our ongoing program to remove unnecessary and outdated policies. There are two that we're bringing forward. One is the Queenstown Airport Corporation dividend policy, which dates from 2011, and that's now been superseded by the statement of expectations that council issues, which sort of talks to dividends, and in the arts and culture policy again, which goes as far back as 1993. And obviously we have the new creative and heritage strategy. So we've got other tools to deliver that, and it's part of a program to retire pre-established or invalid policies or out-of-date policies.
Yeah, thank you. We've received a bit of, well, there was some discussion around the QAC dividend policy. I mean, in reading the old policy, you know, it doesn't appear to align with the quantum of the expected dividends, or, I mean, is there any risk associated with removing this?
I don't. I mean, Brendan's in the room as well, and obviously, I don't think it does. I mean, I think what the current policy, the 211 one, is the inadequacy of a policy written in time and space. Obviously,
different expectations.
Yeah, and in 2011, the provision for a statement of expectations wasn't there, so that was introduced in 2019, which is where we established that relationship with QAC, or that expectation with QAC. And I actually, when I read this policy, as think you've indicated it feels well out of date. Doesn't make sense.
So is what you're saying that any expectation we have around dividend should be expressed through the statement of expectation. And there's also addressed in the SOI anyway.
So do you think that's, I suppose the SOI is the response to that, isn't it?
Yeah. The question is there any other reason we would have a policy or need to replace the policy other than, or is it fully?
Well, perhaps Brendan might be able to comment on the
The decision to declare a dividend sits with the directors, and our council policy is not enforceable in that respect. It's the Companies Act that sets that out. And it's also in the Constitution, and there's some protections for QLDC in that Constitution. So I would say the policy is redundant, and certainly the sort of numbers that are in the policy are way behind where the revenue and the dividends sit now.
But perhaps it's a useful conversation to sum that up differently. The council wanted to create a different set of expectations. This policy is not
the right way to do it. So we have, once again, potentially an outdated policy around the appointment of directors of CCOs and stuff as well, very small. There is another policy there. I'm just wondering, is there, given this year, intent of this was to tidy up obsolete policies, is there an opportunity to consolidate a policy regarding CCOs and CCOs, given that we likely have another one as well, CCOs and in fact, we might have done something around CCOs last year.
I'm trying to recall.
Well, that's the governance document. Sorry, I'm just trying to think. Is there something I'm missing here? I don't know if there is.
I don't know if there is. I mean, we can go and have a look at that, the other policy, make sure it's consistency or we're not. But I think the key thing is, that we're, I suppose, progressively just moving through policies as we find them and trying to exit those and actually have no purpose, or as in this case, have no real legal standing as well. I think the key thing coming back to that though is the SOE-SOI relationship, and obviously in terms of shareholdings, that's the constitutional.
And so, just as a side note, are you able to just report back on if there was a policy regarding appointment of directors and management of CCOs that
I'm not sure. We'll come back.
But I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't recall. I'll come back to you. We'll take it out and have a look and come back to you. Nikki, is that a question with Cody or was that yours? I'll go last. Nikki?
Yeah, just around something, and sorry, not direct question, but it'd be nice if they could start to respond. So I'm mentioning it here, just with the SOE, because I don't think there's any risk really in losing this either, except that councils maybe somewhere down the track lose sight of the fact that they maybe need to set policies through the SOE. It's not just what's in that statement of expectations, it's what's not in it. And you get new councillors come on board, you might not know what you need to include in those things, and that's the value of policy. Is that they would have an expectation that we would abide by this policy when creating the SOE. You remove the policy, obviously we're not abiding by it anyway. So this one's not an issue, but it's just a case of, again, to Bridget's point, maybe expanding on the scope is, could we get something in place where we have a list of matters that maybe need to be addressed in the SOE, so we don't skip something that needs to be included, and because we've got no policy guidance in the background. And I think it would be better because it wouldn't be prescriptive, and the council of the day could determine when you've got a policy like this that it may bind you when you don't want to be bound. But if you know the things you have to address.
I would say that there's already heading in the SOE around dividends. So if council decides to amend the SOE, then at that point they'll be seeing what they're changing, what they're dropping off or amending at that point. So I think it's okay.
Yeah, is it more as question is, you know, trying to formalise another policy to address another process? I'm not sure whether that's the advantage you've got the work on that governance.
Could sit within that.
Yeah, that's probably the better place for it if you wanted to highlight that, you know, addressing dividend was a key element. That's where I think you should put it.
Where's it?
In the governance, the guide.
Oh, yeah, well, it was all about the policy, because when I was looking at it, we've got this whole policy, which does us more harm for us than good. But if under the expectation on page 7 of the SOI, the airport have got their own policy for dividends, which is quite a good policy. So I'm just trying to understand. Obviously, it flowed from our statement of expectation. I was quite trying to understand where our expectation says QAC will maintain or grow shareholders' value with an expectation will pay an annual dividend to council. I was wondering, is that flowed through to quite a good policy they wrote? Is that, do you feel that's strong enough in our SOE? I'm not saying we have to change it now. Just trying to get a feel for it. You said that we've covered it with the SOE, but just wondering whether those words are actually strong enough to ensure we do get it. Or is it they are linked to back to the point that's up to the directors? Okay. Suppose that answers my question.
Yeah. What I was going to say is what we've been covering. I think I had a question about how does a QLDC policy apply to, I think QAC, you've answered that, it doesn't. And yeah, the other question I had was similar to Lyle's, where the wording in the statement of expectation, there's a lot less wording there than was in that policy. And
yes, but that policy tries to cover things that the SOE doesn't. And it's covered by a dividend. And I suppose at the end of the day, I mean, council agrees the SOE next year is likely to be when we come back for our SOE to be looked at as an opportunity. No, the SOE. We did the last SOE in 2024. You just reaffirmed it 2025. So there's always an opportunity to amend that going forward. I think the key thing is, I suppose, again, how much guidance do you give to your company versus how to try and lock that down and through your documents. And I suppose also, yes, you could have a company that takes a different pathway, but I think everything we've seen for the past number of years is that the company is actually very attentive to council's need for a dividend, and that was reaffirmed by Todd Grace last week.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Well, maybe you're going to reduce.
Well, we always knew it was going to reduce, and I think that's where you actually need your governance board or company to have that flexibility to do that.
Yeah, I think I was going to say I also agree. I think we've got the CCO governance manual, and there's a separate appendix in it just for the airport. That probably is the place where a list of things that should be included in a statement or could be included in the statement of expectations is listed for anyone who's coming in new to them.
I was saying, a perverse situation where, like, if Aurora Energy and Dunedin City Council, where they expected too much dividend out of there, and it affected, undermined the operation of the business and the renewals program. So, we don't want to go down that road.
Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? Do I have a mover? Thank you, Mel. Seconder. Thank you, Barry. Any discussion?
Well, I just want to make the further comment that reading the SOI, which we had a lot of involvement in, page 7, the policy there, I think is very good. So what we got was a pretty good outcome from the words we did put in our statement of expectation.
I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Vote against. Motion carries. I move probably excluded from the following parts of the that's the meeting. What if they